Part 50. Man at the Top of the Food Chain. Author, Xionglang Guo. Chapter 491. Each of the flying swords that branched out was only a few inches long, like raindrops. They rushed towards the ground at dozens of times the speed of sound at the same time, as if an unprecedented heavy rain had fallen. But their power far exceeds that of ordinary raindrops. The terrifying screams spread layer by layer in the air, and they will tear apart and pierce everything on the ground. Even Li Nian could not completely dodge the large-scale flying sword attack at this speed. He could only use the electromagnetic passport with all his strength to cover his entire body with a layer of strong electromagnetic field, hoping to block the opponent's attack. But at this moment, the flying swords that originally turned into streams of light and fell down, which were difficult for Li Nian to see clearly, suddenly became clearly visible. No, it's not me who has become clear, it's them who have become slower. When Li Nian reacted to this in his mind, the speed of the flying swords falling in the sky had dropped to a few meters per second, and then became slower and slower. When Li Nian had previously deployed the electromagnetic shield, the power reached at a peak, all the flying swords in the sky had stopped. Only Li Nian reacted to the changes in speed. When he looked up at the still flying sword in the sky and felt strange, a cry of surprise sounded from behind him. "Your Majesty," Mago exclaimed, jumped down from behind Li Nian, and half knelt on the ground. At the same time, there were also a series of surprised or excited voices in the communication. Li Nian's mind went blank for a moment, and then he looked in the direction where Mag was kneeling. A man was wearing a white robe, with long black hair flying in the wind, as if a black flame was burning. The man was standing there. Standing in front of him quietly and looking at him. The man gave people a very strange feeling. He seemed like an ordinary person, but also like a piece of land that was hard to touch. The inaccessible starry sky. Li Nian just looked at him blankly, wanting to say something, but in the end he didn't say those two words. He just said hurriedly, "Brother Fang is fighting the true disciples, and Uncle Bai is trapped by the Zixiao section. There's no need to worry about Bai Zing, it's only a matter of time before he escapes from trouble, and this time he escapes with his own strength, which will make his strength even higher." Li Anping nodded, looking at Li Nian in front of him, his eyes revealing there was something strange. "I have suspended Fang Heji's side, go and save him." Just then, hundreds of soldiers around him have all come to Li Anping's body, kneeling on one knee, with expressions of admiration on their faces, looking feverishly at Li Anping in front of them, looking at their god. The battle has nothing to do with them. In their hearts, as long as Li Anping appears, all problems will be non-problems, and mankind will win. Li Nian saw soldiers kneeling around him. Seeing the fire in their eyes, he felt strange in his heart. He continued what Li Anping said, "Those are two true disciples. The possibility of me defeating them without any damage is only about 2%. Li Anping smiled, "Then I will help you become 100%. A white light appeared in his hands. Then those photons combined with each other and connected together. In just a few seconds, a red cloak appeared in Li Anping's palm. This was created directly by Li Anping using his energy void creation through mass energy conversion. After the cloak appeared, it floated and was draped on Li Nian's back. This cloak can offset all electromagnetic forces. Gravity, strong force, weak force, its offset limit is very high, and most attacks in the universe will be ineffective against you. Li Nian touched the cloak on his shoulders and couldn't believe that a seemingly ordinary cloak could have such an amazing effect. He had no idea that this cloak was made by Li Anping on the spot, and he only thought that it was Li Anping who took it out. "What's the name of this cloak?" Li Anping said casually, "You can call it an invulnerable cloak." Li Nian frowned, feeling that this name was ridiculous. But Li Anping's palms immediately lit up with streaks of white light again, still using the method of mass energy conversion and void creation, and a pair of red gloves appeared on his palms. The red gloves also have the word "one blow" written on them. Li Nian looked at the complete set curiously and asked, "What is this?" "This can be called a one-hit kill glove." Li Anping thought for a while and explained, "The molecular structure of the target hit by these gloves will lose the constraints of electromagnetic force, and his consciousness algorithm will be directly decomposed." They were both materially and spiritually obliterated at the same time. 99% of the things in the universe can be killed with one hit by these gloves. Watching the glove loosen itself and float around his hands, a strange feeling spread from his hands to Li Nian's body. One blow will kill the glove. He felt that this name was very domineering. The offense and defense have been solved, the next thing is speed. As he said that, Li Anping opened his hands again, and with a burst of white light, a dagger was hung on Li Nian's waist. "This is called a jumping dagger," Li Anping explained. "He can teleport through dimensional jumps. The range is about 1 light year. As long as you can see it, or have been there, or set the distance and direction, it is fine." "What's the cooling time?" While Li Anping was still explaining, the impatient Li Nian couldn't wait to use the jumping dagger. Li Anping's mouth curled up slightly, watching Li Nian's figure disappear after a flash, and said lightly, "Kill them all, my child." Just after Li Nian's figure disappeared, Li Anping snapped his fingers. Compared with the original design, pure copying was easier for him. With his snap, hundreds of human warriors around him all flashed white light, and they were all equipped with invulnerable cloaks, one-hit kill gloves and jumping daggers. A burst of cold light came from Li Anping's eyes, just like the breath of the ice hell. He slowly ordered, within a light second, "I don't want to see any other living things except the humans on Earth and the soldiers of the colony star." "Yes." The soldiers kneeling on the ground responded loudly, and the next moment they all disappeared in a flash. They swept in all directions like a breeze, bringing a cold killing feast. And Li Anping's eyes were already looking in the direction of Li Nian and the two true disciples. Just when Wanjian Liuxing was just performed, Xie Wanjian felt that the whole world seemed to be still. It was not that time was still, because his consciousness was still running, but whether it was the true essence in his body, the muscles on his body, or the flying sword in the distance, they all stopped and could not move at all. He could see Hua Bailey in the corner of his eyes, and his face was also full of horror. Obviously, she could not move at all. This was Li Anping solidifying the space and changing the distance between the space slices, making them become amber frozen in space. But fortunately, the Earth warriors on the opposite side seemed to have something abnormal. After appearing, they retreated and did not attack them. What the two true disciples did not know was that this was Li Anping's order to the other party Haja. About a few dozen seconds later, a short human warrior appeared in front of the two. Xie Wanjian recognized that this Earthman was the mortal who had just grabbed his flying sword. As he looked at him with disdain, the short man's fist with red boxing gloves hit his chest. Although the opponent's speed and strength far exceeded that of ordinary people, in Xie Wanjian's view, it was still just ordinary strength. Although Xie Wanjian devoted himself to swordsmanship and did not have any other magic weapons on him, his protective sword aura alone was enough to defend against the opponent's attack. He was more worried about why he and Hua Bailey were in a state of stillness, and what kind of ability this was. But as Xie Wanjian looked at him with disdain, a red fist hit his chest, and he didn't even have time to react. His entire body, whether it was the nascent soul, the true essence, the meridians, the muscles and bones, had all been decomposed into particles that were difficult to distinguish with the naked eye. Not only was his body, but his consciousness was also completely wiped out, and he was dead as hell. Li Anping smiled, and Hua Bailey in the distance suddenly found that she could move, and she let out a scream, and a spell that froze thousands of miles directly lowered the temperature within a radius of thousands of miles to -200 degrees in an instant, and she flew rapidly towards the north with a flash of light. Whether it was the inexplicable stillness just now, or the ordinary punch that Li Nian used to kill Xie Wanjian instantly, she was shocked and angry, but the opponent's attack was too strange, so she had to retreat temporarily and think of a solution. To be continued, please search Ocean literature. The novels are better and updated faster. Man at the top of the food chain, author, Xianglang Go. Chapter 492. Hua Bailey's whole body turned into a blue light, and in the blink of an eye, it had flown hundreds of miles away. However, the dwarf who had just killed Xie Wanjian flashed and appeared in front of him again, punching her head. She could not feel any true energy, nor any super strong power fluctuations. In Hua Bailey's spiritual perception, the opponent's punch was just an ordinary punch, but the speed and power were far beyond ordinary people. But it was just such an ordinary punch that killed Xie Wanjian in seconds. At this time, seeing the opponent's fist attack, Hua Bailey did not dare to take it hard. The light turned and rushed into the sky. At the same time, a ray of Eye-Soul Divine Light had enveloped the opponent's dwarf. This Eye-Soul Divine Light is one of the 10 fundamental magical powers of Xiao Palace that Hua Bailey practiced, and it is an anti-enemy spell in the 7 ancient ice and frost methods. However, the Eye-Soul Divine Light, which could easily freeze a city, and even completely freeze consciousness, thinking, and soul, now enveloped the opponent without any effect. This is all because of the invulnerable cloak that Li Nian is wearing. As long as the attack is still composed of the 4 basic forces, as long as the means of attack do not exceed all the phenomena in the universe and the upper limit of the cloak, this cloak is invincible. Hua Bei's countless subsequent tests also proved this point. Various cold air attacks, Ice Soul Sword, Frost Poison, Ice Flame Strangulation, low temperature, high temperature, cutting, shock, even toxins, and spiritual attacks all have no effect. If you want to trap the opponent, whether it is a magic weapon, a flying sword, or changing the terrain, it will be destroyed by the opponent's punch. What makes Hua Bei feel more terrified is that the opponent has a means of transmission similar to the movement of heaven and earth. No matter how Hua Bei accelerates, how to escape, the opponent will instantly appear beside her and give him a punch. At first, the opponent was a little unskilled in this attack mode, but relying on the invincible defense, the opponent quickly adapted to it and began to use Hua Bei as a sparring partner with a cat and mouse mentality. When Hua Bailey had used up all her magic weapons, talismans, and used all her means, but still failed to stop the other party, despair began to shroud her heart. 800 years of cultivation, I didn't expect it to be gone today. With a bang, Li Nian's fist hit Hua Bailey's body, and the other party's whole body collapsed in an instant, and the whole person completely disappeared between heaven and earth, leaving no trace. In Fengming Gorge, the sky of fire and thunder clouds covered hundreds of miles in radius. In this sky of hundreds of miles, countless spaces were folded. As a result, the sky of hundreds of miles actually contained more than tens of thousands of miles of space, and various radiations representing wind, thunder, earth, and fire filled it, killing everything in the formation. In the sky more than 10 kilometers away, Shang Tian was wearing a purple robe, his hair and clothes moved without wind, and he looked at the 9 heavens and 10 earth starlight extinction formation in the sky with a happy face. When Xiao Palace first started fighting with the Earth Army, they were very cautious. Because in Shang Tian's intelligence, the emperor of the human race on Earth, a mortal named Li Anping, possesses very powerful strength. Although most cultivators did not take it seriously at first, believing that no matter how strong a mortal is, he cannot threaten a cultivator. However, what they lacked the least is time. So they still tried. Because of this test, the death of thousands of out-of-body cultivators made them begin to face up to the military strength of the Earth and the power of technological weapons. This is also why Xiao Palace no longer sent cultivators below the Jindan stage, and began to use Jindan and Yuanying stage cultivators as the main combat force. In fact, it proved that their strategy was correct. To deal with human technological weapons, Xiao Palace suppressed them with high-end power, which was much more cost-effective than consuming numbers. However, the high-end combat power of the Earth, especially Bai Xing, Jingguang, Yanbei, and others, also made the cultivators of Xixiao Palace realize the power of the ability users. Therefore, they paid more attention to Li Enping, the strongest human being highlighted in Shangtian intelligence. However, in the battles and tests again and again, Xixiao Palace found some problems, that is, Li Enping, the strongest human being, seemed to be gone. After confirming the news again and again, and confirming that Li Enping had left the Earth and human society, Xixiao Palace began to slowly increase the forces invested in the battlefield, such as the 10 true disciples and the elders of the Huaxu level. Shang Tian, who knew the news, was both relieved and disappointed, but facing the Earth without Li Enping, he was no longer willing to wait. After his repeated persuasion and joint efforts, Xixiao Palace finally took out the sex treasure, Shangqing Atlas, and surrounded and killed Bai Xing with the 9 heavens and 10 earth starlight extinction array. Once Bai Xing dies, the rest of Yanbei and Jingguang will not be a problem. By then, the entire human race and the entire Earth will be conquered by Xixiao Palace. Haha, Li Enping, what will happen if you see all this after you return to Earth? Shang Tian laughed. I'm really looking forward to your expression then. Just as Shang Tian was lost in his own fantasy, a golden light flashed around him, and Jianhui, one of the 10 true disciples, had already performed sword escape and came to his side. Looking at Shang Tian with the raised corner of his mouth, he asked curiously, "Junior brother Shang, what are you laughing at?" "Nothing." Shang Tian pursed his lips and explained, "It's just that Bai Xing was trapped in the 9 heavens and 10 earth starlight extinction array, and he is doomed to die. After this battle, the people on Earth no longer have the power to stop us." Bai Xing. Jianhui raised his eyebrows. This person is indeed a genius. He can practice martial arts to this level, innovate, and persist in the 9 heavens and 10 earth starlight extinction array for 3 days and 3 nights. It is really amazing. This 9 heavens and 10 earth starlight extinction array is based on the 5 immortals of the Huaxu period and the treasure of the Xixiao Palace, the Shangqing Atlas, and then combined with 12 Yuanying cultivators and 108 Jindan cultivators to reverse space and time, and burn the opponent with a total of 12 kinds of Tai's Hangtianhuo. Although they have been preparing for 49 days, most people do not think that Bai Xing can persist in the array for a full 49 days. It is already extremely amazing to be able to hold on for 1 or 2 days. Shang Tian smiled and said, "But why should Senior Jianhui belittle himself? No matter how powerful the secret martial arts are, they are just minor techniques. Only the method of my Taoist school, cultivating the truth and being convinced, practicing the Tao and living forever, is the real way to the blue sky." At this moment, the sky was full of thunder snakes, thunderous thunder, and the sky-high flames dyed the entire Fengming Gorge red. Jianhui looked at the sky in the distance and murmured, "The second taste of the dragon fire has begun. I don't know how long this White Star River can last." To be continued. Please search for Piaotian Literature. The novel is better and updated faster. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xionglang Go. Chapter 493. During the time when Jianhui and Shang Tian were talking, more and more fire clouds appeared in the sky. In addition to the red flames and blue-white electric lights, there were also some golden flames in the sky. That was the dragon fire of the 12 heavenly fires in the 9 heavens and 10 earth starlight extinction formation. It had the miraculous effect of burning everything and never extinguishing everything. This also meant that this formation had entered the second stage. When the disciples of Xixiao Palace who were guarding the 9 heavens and 10 earth starlight extinction formation saw the golden flames in the formation begin to burn, they all concluded that Bai Xing would not be able to hold on for long. But just as Jianhui was concentrating on observing the situation in the formation, the communication jade talisman on his body rang. Not only him, but also Shang Tian beside him, and all the communication jade talismans of the true disciples rang. The content of the jade talisman was very simple. It was that the soul lamps of Hua Bailey and Xie Wanjian, 2 of the 10 true disciples, in the Zixiao Palace had gone out. This meant that not only were their bodies dead, but even their nascent souls had not escaped. They had been completely annihilated, and they could not even reincarnate and cultivate again. The death of 2 true disciples was a serious loss for any section, but just half an hour later, the jade talisman sounded again, and the soul lamps of 3 more true disciples went out. At the same time, more than 100 Jindan disciples had been killed. What happened? Jian Hui frowned. Did the human army come to besiege? But how could so many people be lost? Within thousands of miles around the entire 9 heavens and 10 earth starlight extinction array, all the disciples of the Zixiao Palace seemed to be shrouded by an invisible net, as if some unknown monsters were constantly devouring their lives. Jian Hui began to contact other true disciples and elders. Uncle Suangsu, what happened? Why did so many junior brothers die? I don't know. No one saw what happened. Suangsu's mouth revealed a hint of coldness. All the disciples who saw it disappeared. Until now, we still don't know what the enemy is. Still don't know. Jian Hui raised his sword eyebrows and said, Uncle, where is the nearest attack place to me? I'll go and see. Jian Hui, don't be impulsive. The head brother has already known the situation and will make arrangements immediately. While the two were talking, the voice of the supreme head of Zixiao Palace, Taoist Qianqian, had been transmitted to everyone's sea of consciousness through the communication jade talisman. According to Taoist Suangsuan's arrangement, in order to deal with unknown dangers, all Zixiao Palace disciples will shrink their defense lines. The true disciples and elders led ordinary disciples to guard the defense points selected by Taoist Qianqian. Shang Tian and Jian Hui also led dozens of disciples each to the places where they were arranged. The elders and true disciples kept in touch at all times, sharing what they had, and must not die in vain again. But before they could make all the arrangements, the attack began again. The voice of a true disciple sounded in Shang Tian's communication jade talisman. It's the Earthlings, they're space warriors. No, they are weird. Magic spells, magic weapons, flying swords are useless, no attack is effective against them. No, we can't stop them. They. One after another panicked voices rang out, and one after another familiar voices lost contact, making the remaining people even more at a loss. Although the cultivators of Zixiao Palace were vulnerable to hundreds of space warriors armed by Lianping, the shrinking defense lines and strongholds. But they no longer knew nothing. According to the explanations of the killed Zixiao Palace disciples, the attackers were a group of space warriors wearing red cloaks, but their strength was extremely powerful. So far, no magic weapon, spell or flying sword could hurt them. Just when the elders and true disciples were shocked by the strength of this group of Earthlings, something even more surprising happened. Suangsu was guarding a stronghold with dozens of Jindan stage disciples and 2 Yuanying stage disciples. Suddenly, 5 red-cloaked space warriors appeared in their sight. These 5 red-cloaked space warriors each threw a punch, and 5 Jindan monks were turned into dust. Taoist Suangsu opened his eyes, and a flash of anger flashed across his face. Bold, he saw him open his sword finger, and thousands of sword lights had strangled the 5 warriors. With Taoist Suangsu's Huaxu stage cultivation and thousands of years of practice in the art of flying swords, this move could turn a space battleship into nothing. In his eyes, the 5 human warriors were already dead. He didn't know how many such space warriors he had killed in this year. However, the strange appearance of these 5 warriors before, and the attack was even more bizarre. After releasing the flying sword, he still released a shuttle-shaped magic weapon just in case. Then, in his incredible eyes, thousands of sword lights and sword energy swept across the opponent's body, but it was like a breeze blowing on the face, without any effect. How is it possible? This was Suanksu's first reaction. Without a barrier, without magic weapons, and without any defensive actions, relying on the body to block his attack, even the Supreme Master of Xiao Palace could not do this, but not only did someone do it in front of him, but there were 5 people at once. For Suanksu's attack, the opponent did not react at all, but disappeared again in an instant and then appeared, and then each punched, and 5 Jindan stage cultivators were turned into dust again. He seemed to see a sneer on the opponent's face behind the armor. With a roar, Suanksu opened his hands and shot out 9 flying swords in succession, turning into hundreds of thousands of sword lights, which shot towards the 5 people like an overwhelming force. They cooperated with each other and complemented each other to form a sword formation, which completely wrapped the bodies of the 5 people like a sword ball, leaving no dead angle. At the same time, Suanksu's shuttle-shaped magic weapon, the 10,000 Thunder Universe Lightning Shuttle, kept wandering around the sword ball, and hundreds of bucket-thick lightning snakes hit the sword ball every second. The Yuanying disciple on the side said, "Everyone, use lightning spells quickly to help the master uncle." With his order, thousands of lightning lights turned the sword ball into a lightning ball as bright as the sun. The terrifying lightning turned into a scorching high temperature. The disciples in the Jindan realm couldn't stand it first and retreated quickly. Then the disciples in the Yuanying realm also retreated. Only the elder Suanksu in the Huangzi period was still commanding the flying sword, guiding the lightning, and strangling the opponent with the dual damage of cutting and lightning. Facing such an attack, the opponent still seemed to have no defensive means. If they directly resisted, Suanksu couldn't think of anyone else who could survive such an attack except the immortals in the heavenly court. But just as he was thinking this, 5 fists directly broke through the sword net around him. Whether it was a flying sword or a thunderbolt, it was no different from paper in front of these fists. There was not even a trace of injury on the 5 people. They seemed to have impatiently stopped the surrounding attacks, and then in a flash, 5 more Jindan disciples were killed. Then, the 5 of them looked at Elder Suanksu, who seemed to have enjoyed the mood of playing cat and mouse enough. The 5 of them disappeared in a flash again. Suanksu's heart was alarmed, and layer after layer of protective chi, magic weapons and sword chi protected him layer by layer. But it was useless. The 5 fists were like poking open a paper window, poking through all of Suanksu's defenses. At the critical moment, Suanksu began to rely on his faster reaction and speed than the other party, and turned into a beam of light to escape into the sky. His heart was filled with ghosts. In his eyes, the 5 human warriors just now were already unprecedented strong men. Each of them was probably stronger than Bai Xing and the 5 elders of Xiao. He couldn't understand why humans had 5 such strong men, so they were sent out only now. But the next moment, he had no time to think so much, because just a few seconds after he escaped, there was another flash, and the human warriors in red cloaks appeared in front of him again, but this time there were 10 of them. Suanksu's eyes were full of despair and disbelief. Why? Why are these mortals so powerful? I don't accept it. I don't accept it. The cultivators in the void stage relied on the speed of the escape light, the sensitivity of reaction, and the intuition of danger. It would take a lot of time for ordinary red-cloaked space warriors to kill one-on-one, but now there are hundreds of such warriors. They communicate with each other and can move freely in the space within a light year. They can form superior forces at any time and any place to strangle all cultivators. A few dozen seconds later, the news that Taoist Suanksu's soul lamp had gone out reached all the true disciples and elders. This was the first time that an elder in the Huangzi period died in the war between Xiao Palace and Earth. But what they didn't know was that this was just the beginning. They didn't know what they were fighting against. To be continued. Man at the Top of the Food Chain. Author, Xiong Lango. Chapter 494. Crushed, vulnerable, one-sided situation. Facing the red-cloaked space marines, the monks of the Xixiao sect felt as if they had become mortals in front of them. In front of these space warriors, apart from running away, they were not even qualified to fight back. The Jindan level monks have been slaughtered within half an hour, and only 4 true disciples are left among the nascent soul level monks. Now only the void level monks can rely on some illusions, space, time, escape spells, and the red cloak space marines tangle with each other. But even these hallucinations, space, and time attacks still cannot escape the composition of the 4 powerful forces in the universe. At most, they can only temporarily harass the red-cloaked warriors, but cannot truly cause effective damage. As more and more warriors flashed over, the elders in the Suanxu stage were about to be killed one by one. In just over an hour, all the monks from the outer Xixiao palace had been slaughtered. The remaining monks, led by the headmaster of Xixiao palace, Taoist Qianqian, gathered together in the center of them. The 5 old men closed their eyes tightly. It was the Xixiao 5 elders who used all their strength to use the 9 heavens and 10 earths extermination formation, trying to trap and kill Bai Zeng. As the Jindan and nascent soul disciples who formed the formation were killed one by one, their pressure suddenly increased. In the sky, around these remaining monks, hundreds of red-cloaked space warriors surrounded them. Seeing more and more red-cloaked warriors flashing around them, the eyes of everyone in Xixiao Palace became increasingly gloomy. Getting more and more desperate. Shang Tian looked at more and more earth warriors around him angrily, completely confused as to what was going on. Of all the future timelines he could connect to, nothing like it had appeared in any of them. However, although he was a little worried, he still had the cards in his hand that were enough to face all enemies, and he was not as desperate as the monks around him. Where did these people come from? Just when he felt doubtful and vaguely uneasy, another man flashed in the sky among the space marines. As soon as this man appeared, all the space marines around him immediately surrounded the man. And no one dared to stay above him. All headed by him, floating beneath the man's feet and behind him with the help of the interstellar armor's anti-gravity engines. As soon as the man appeared, Shang Tian's pupils kept dilating, a trace of ferocious veins were exposed on his forehead, and uncontrollable murderous aura was released from his body. Weeping and complaining, sounds like voices from the 9 nether hells came out of his mouth. Lion, Ping. The deep hatred contained in it made the elders of Xixiao Palace around them feel the slightest chill. They could not imagine what kind of deep hatred could make Shang Tian, who usually behaved peacefully and kindly, show such a cold expression. The violent side. Taoist Qianqian on the side had already noticed Li Anping among the other warriors. After all, the other party was dressed in white robes, which was too conspicuous among the space marines. When he heard what Shang Tian said, he frowned and said through his spiritual consciousness and Shang Tian, "This man in white robe is Li Anping, the king of mankind on earth you mentioned." "That's him." Shang Tian slowly calmed down, looked at Li Anping in the sky and said, "These red-cloaked space warriors must be the ones behind him." Taoist Qianqian looked at Li Anping in the sky, and his eyes showed an unprecedented solemn look. He had also taken action against the hundreds of space warriors in front of him just now. But even with his level of cultivation, there was nothing he could do against these space warriors. Until now, they still have no way to harm the space marines in front of them. This also made Li Anping at this time even more unpredictable in his eyes. On the other side, Li Anping just glanced at the people in Xixiao Palace in front of him. Then he looked towards the 9 heavens and 10 earth starlight extinction formation wrapped in fire clouds and lightning. Li Nian, who was standing behind Li Anping, also looked at the flames in the sky. Apart from his short stature, he couldn't see any difference from other space warriors. He looked at the increasingly fierce fire clouds in the sky and said, "Is Uncle Bai okay? Let's go up and save him." "There's no rush," he said calmly, "he'll be out soon." Just then, the monks from Xixiao Palace opposite seemed to be discussing something. Taoist Qianqian walked out first, looked at Li Anping in the sky and said, Your Excellency is the king of the human race on earth. Li Anping. But when faced with Taoist Xuanxuan's question, Li Anping didn't even look at him. It looked like he didn't care about Taoist Xianxian or Zixiao Palace at all. A flash of anger flashed through Taoist Xuanxuan's heart, but thousands of years of qi refining skills had long since polished his Taoist heart to an incomparably rounded state. The slightest trace of anger disappeared without a trace in an instant, as if it had never appeared. Nothing could leave any trace on his Taoist heart. His expression remained unchanged, and he spoke loudly again, "Since you have won the victory today, why do you need to be aggressive? Why don't we work together and make compensation for the losses on the Earth, and we can also release the White Galaxy in the formation? Otherwise, if the fight continues, although Zixiao Palace is no match for us, the human race on Earth may not fare well either. King of the human race on Earth, you may not know that our Zixiao Palace's strength is only average among the many cultivating sects, not to mention that there are many heavenly immortals above the cultivators." Li Anping glanced at Taoist Xianxian calmly. He didn't know if it was Taoist Xuanxuan's illusion, but he felt pity in his eyes. At this moment, a shocking explosion came from the 9 heavens and 10 earth starlight extinction array. In a series of long whistles, Bai Xing turned into a light and shadow and rushed out of the array. If Li Anping hadn't intervened, he would have only had a 30% chance of breaking out of the array. However, half an hour ago, because countless disciples who set up the array were killed, he suddenly felt that the pressure on his body was getting lighter and lighter, and finally rushed out of the array with his own strength. Not only that, during these 3 days and 3 nights, although he had consumed a lot of energy, he also used the heavenly fire and acupoints in the opponent's array to retemper and temper his mind and strength. Although he was seriously injured after leaving the array, once he rested and treated, his strength would be even better after he recovered. "Stop him! Don't let this kid escape!" As he broke out of the formation, the 5 elders of Zixiao all spit out blood, and their powerful true essence rose up. Various magic weapons and flying swords smashed towards the White Star River in the sky. Among them were seals as heavy as mountains, flying swords that slowed down time, bells that shuttled through space, and giant palms that gathered starfire. Each attack was earth-shattering. They had obviously been operating the formation wholeheartedly and didn't know the situation outside the formation. When they saw them taking action, Taoist Xianxian was already in a bad mood. And Shangtian's eyes shot out a burst of cold light, and the whole person brought a flash of escape light, rushing towards Li Anping in the sky. He even pretended to shout, "Devil, die!" As he and the 5 elders of Zixiao moved, a bitter smile flashed across Taoist Xuanxuan's face, and he had no choice but to mobilize his true energy for a final struggle. The other elders and disciples also shouted angrily, and directed all their attacks towards Bai Xing, Li Anping, and the Space Warriors. To be continued. Man at the Top of the Food Chain. Author, Xiong Go. Chapter 495. Li Anping stretched out his palm, and Shang Tian, who turned into a light and rushed towards him, was like a chicken, and was caught by his neck and lifted up in his hand. On the other side, the Space Warriors had swarmed up and killed the monks of Zixiao Palace. Even the old monks of the 5 elders of Zixiao who were at the level of transformation were helpless against them. It was only a matter of time before they were killed or captured. Li Anping looked at Shang Tian in his palm, who was full of hatred, and said lightly, "The blood of the Shang family? Good ability, stupid choice." "He, Li Anping, I know I am not your opponent." Shang Tian laughed, his eyes full of a smug expression of success, "but to defeat a person, you don't have to be stronger than him." As he finished speaking, a meat bag bulged on Shang Tian's forehead in the center of his eyebrows, and a piece of chaos-colored fragment broke through the epidermis and drilled out from the center of his eyebrows, looking like his eyes. As the fragment emerged from the epidermis, chaotic rays of light shone on Li Anping's body. Countless information covered his eyes, and his whole body stopped moving. Seeing Li Anping staring at the fragment motionlessly, Shang Tian laughed. Li Anping, you killed my parents, destroyed my family, and destroyed countless races in the multiverse in countless time and space. You deserve to die. I wish I could drink your blood and peel your skin. The more Shang Tian spoke, the more ferocious his expression became. And the Taoist Xian, who was fighting below, saw the fragment on Shang Tian's forehead and didn't care about the space warriors around him. He stared at the fragment on Shang Tian's forehead with his eyes fixed, and waves of shock rose in his heart. Is that the jade disc of creation? That is one, all, and the way of heaven. It represents the ultimate pursuit of cultivators and represents everything. Seeing the broken pieces on Shang Tian's forehead, Taoist Xian ignored the surrounding Zixiao palace monks and interstellar warriors, and turned into a purple sword light, rushing towards Shang Tian desperately. Old dog, do you really think you are worthy of being my master? Shang Tian sneered, and a shadow flashed behind him. It was a middle-aged version of him who was over 40 years old. In the shadow, he was wearing an ancient robe. With the vicissitudes of life, accompanied by Shang Tian's sneer, he punched out. It was an ordinary punch, but it almost scared Taoist Xian to death. In his eyes, the power of this punch was so heavy that it was as if the whole world was pressing down. His flying sword was directly crushed in half by this pressure. Taoist Xian was already vomiting blood. He was blown away by a punch and crashed into a small hill. The next moment, one shadow after another came out from behind Shang Tian. They were all Shang Tian's means of using the parallel world. Each of the substitutes created by the self in other worlds has the power of the 6th or even the 7th level peak. Martial arts, immortal arts, magic, superpowers, biochemical abilities, power, and technological capabilities. Each of them is a favored child of heaven in other worlds, and the biggest difference between them and Shang Tian is that they chose to flee far away from the world where Li Anping is. Not confronting Li Anping. These parallel world selves are outright traitors and cowards in Shang Tian's eyes. So he used the power of the jade disc of creation to seal them all up, merged them into his body, and turned them into his own substitutes. He punched Xian Taoist away, and looking at Li Anping's motionless appearance, Shang Tian laughed wildly and shouted to the space warriors, "Why are you still fighting? Li Anping has been defeated and subdued by me, why don't you surrender quickly?" The space warriors were a little confused when they saw the big commotion on Shang Tian's side. When Shang Tian shouted the sentence and Li Anping didn't react, they immediately realized that something was wrong. But just as Shang Tian finished saying this, he did something that shocked and angered all the space marines. "Your battle is meaningless, because your king has become an idiot." Shang Tian turned his head and slapped Li Anping on the cheek. He knew that even if Li Anping was contaminated by the fragments of the jade disc of creation, the impact of the information accelerated the process of deification and became something similar to the jade disc of creation. He could not destroy him. Even Li Anping would disappear completely, making it impossible for Shang Tian to really kill Li Anping. However, he still took the opportunity to slap Li Anping a few times. "Even if I ask you to pay some interest, you will never owe me more than this." But just before Shang Tian's slap was about to land on Li Anping's cheek, an invisible force grabbed his wrist, and his whole body could not move at all. Shang Tian looked at Li Anping in doubt and said, "How can you react? I told you that you have excellent abilities, but your choices are too stupid." Li Anping looked at Shang Tian's forehead. "Is this thing called the jade disc of creation? It should taste good." Li Anping stretched out his palm, grabbed the fragment on Shang Tian's forehead with his index finger and thumb, and pulled it off with a force. "How can you be fine?" Shang Tian looked at Li Anping with shame and anger, his eyes full of disbelief. The jade disc of creation contains all the information before and after the universe was opened up. Even if it is just a fragment, it is enough to make any human burst his head. Even Shang Tian himself only dared to use it, not read the information inside. In his estimation, after reading a lot of information, Li Anping had lived through tens of millions of lives in a flash. The speed of his deification would be greatly accelerated, and he would become a being similar to the way of heaven and the origin. But how could he be completely fine now? He naturally didn't know, and even his original body in any parallel world couldn't know, and he had never encountered it. With the help of the chaos tide, the accumulation of replicas, and slow adaptation, Li Anping in front of him had already embarked on the path of superstring life and became a 10-dimensional creature. For him, who could cross and exist between any timeline and multiverse, the information contained in the jade disk of creation really just tasted good. Shang Tian watched Li Anping grab the fragment of the jade disk of creation and put it in his mouth, just like a cookie, chewed a few times, and then swallowed down the throat into the stomach. The jade disk of creation, the Akashic record, or the origin, or the way of heaven, this little gadget from another world, the information in it has increased my strength and knowledge again. You don't have it on you. Li Anping looked at Shang Tian coldly, but this is only a part of it, the rest should be in your body. Li Anping's right hand grabbed Shang Tian's head, but Shang Tian's head was like a door to another dimension in Li Anping's palm. His palm went straight through Shang Tian's head and didn't know where it went. Looking at him, it was like he put his palm into a bag and started to take something out. Shang Tian's face was choked again. He didn't expect that Li Anping not only saw through that he was just remotely controlling the puppet, but also could use the puppet to travel through time and space to find him. Separated by countless time and space, the heavenly palace, the South Heaven Gate. How dare you, you daring lunatic, trespass into the heavenly palace? 100,000 heavenly soldiers and generals rushed out, and the three-eyed general in the lead looked at the huge arm that suddenly appeared in the sky and spanned tens of thousands of meters of void, and his face showed anger. Dare to die. As soon as he rushed out, he was gently pinched in the palm of Li Anping's hand, and then with a puff, he was directly exploded into a ball of blood like a mosquito. Li Anping's voice echoed throughout the heavenly palace. Little gods from other worlds, don't bother me, I'm here to find something, I'm not interested in you. To be continued. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xiong Go. Chapter 496. Deep in the heaven, on a pagoda more than 1,000 feet high, all around, whether in the sky or underground, there were densely packed heavenly soldiers and generals wearing golden armor guarding. And on the top floor of this pagoda, Shang Tian was sitting cross-legged on a cushion, and beside him were Yeshao and Kudia, who looked nervous. As the two watched, Shang Tian suddenly opened his eyes and shouted, "Oh no, he's chasing me!" As he spoke, he suddenly jumped up, like a frightened tiger or lion, with panic all over his face. Night Beast beside him also became nervous when he heard Shang Tian say this. Li Anping is chasing after us, how is this possible? Doesn't the jade butterfly of fortune have any effect on him? Damn it, I don't know what went wrong. Shang Tian's face was extremely gloomy. This was the first time since he awakened his ability that an event completely transcended his control. Originally, since he awakened his ability, he knew the direction of countless past and future worlds, and everything was under his control. This feeling of completely escaping his control for the first time was really annoying. According to Shang Tian's approach that had been successful in other parallel worlds, it was to use something similar to the jade butterfly of fortune to make Li Anping a real god, which could not only make the other party's humanity disappear, but sometimes even make the other party use it for himself, and also receive the countless treasures that Li Anping left for the earth. But why did it fail completely when it came to him? When he thought of the horror of Li Anping and the almost invincible figure, Shang Tian's heart jumped uncontrollably, and the fear followed him like a shadow, making him unable to get rid of it. Kudia on the side said, It's useless to stay here, let's run away quickly. The most powerful gods in this world may be able to stop Li Anping for a long time. I can't stop him. Shang Tian's face was full of frustration. At this moment, there were loud shouts and explosions from afar. His face became even paler. Kill! With an order, tens of thousands of heavenly soldiers and generals were like golden streams, holding up various swords, guns, sticks and clubs, and fiercely bombarded the 10,000-meter giant hand in the sky. Behind them, there were countless golden armored gods holding bows and crossbows, constantly attacking the giant hand in the sky. Each attack of a sword, gun, stick and club carried powerful elemental damage, and its power was enough to rival that of a 4th-level ability user. And those uniform long-range bow and arrow shootings, all of which were attached with dense talismans, were blessed with various explosions. Shock, flame, freezing, and toxin attacks. Its power was like countless intercontinental missiles exploding one by one on Li Anping's palm. These heavenly soldiers and generals were not polite to Li Anping, who suddenly broke into the heaven, and they did not even consider not resisting. But they were not real cultivators, but incense gods created by the immortals to guard their homes. These heavenly soldiers and generals did not even have the strength of the void and some of the nascent soul stages. Their attacks were destined to be futile against Li Anping at this time, whether it was various elemental attacks or various explosion shocks. Against the backdrop of the giant palm, it was as ridiculous as a toy. This giant palm was not an illusion, but a real change of Li Anping's palm. For Li Anping, who had already mastered the reorganization of matter and the creation of the void, it was simply too simple to make his palm 10,000 meters in size. A golden armored man held a big knife, rolled up a whirlwind of flames and chopped at the giant palm, but the blade just chopped on Li Anping's palm. The whole person was set on fire by a stronger and hotter flame, and flew out screaming. Another golden armored general held a spear and gathered all his divine power into the spear. Then he saw the golden light on the spear one after another, and it flew out of his hand like a flash of lightning, stabbing fiercely at Li Anping's giant palm. But at the same moment when the spear hit the palm, a golden light flashed, and the spear had already shot back at a faster speed, piercing a big hole in the chest of the golden armored general. The same situation can be found everywhere. No matter what kind of attack these heavenly soldiers and generals launched, they could not leave the slightest trace on Li Anping's palm. Not only that, as long as someone attacked the palm, whether it was close combat or long-range attack, no matter what kind of attack method was used, it would be instantly reflected back by Li Anping, and the power was 10 times greater. Whether the attacker died or was injured, it all depended on how much power he used to attack. After only one round of attack, Li Anping was unscathed, but a bloody rain fell among the heavenly soldiers and generals in the heavenly court, screaming and wailing everywhere, and the remaining people who did not attack were terrified and quickly retreated. Li Anping ignored these defeated soldiers and continued to fly towards Shang Tian. The air around his palm formed a terrible surge of energy. Starting from the south gate of heaven, Li Anping tore through the formations and barriers one after another with one hand, just like layers of paper. Just when Li Anping came to a pavilion, the sound of a deafening horn sounded, and tens of millions of heavenly soldiers and generals rushed in from all directions, and several gods with strength far exceeding that of the people around them appeared in the front. The leading god holding a pagoda said, "Who is coming?" He seemed to want to say something polite, but Li Anping was too lazy to pay attention to these insects. The giant palm did not pause at all, and rushed along the original trajectory. The heavenly soldiers and generals who came to block along the way were crushed into pieces of powder without saying a word. The anger flashed across the face of the pagoda-bearing heavenly king, and he threw the pagoda in his hand, shouting, "You bold lunatic, why don't you surrender?" The relic Ruyi golden pagoda in his hand was given by the Buddha, and it has the power to suppress all demons and ghosts. The 7-layer world in the pagoda can even seal all kinds of demons and ghosts. I'm afraid that this pagoda is enough to suppress ordinary 6th level combat power at will. Now the relic Ruyi golden pagoda was thrown by the pagoda-bearing heavenly king, and it spun in the air and turned into the size of a small mountain, pressing fiercely towards Li Anping's palm, and it seemed that he wanted to capture the other party in one fell swoop. But how could this attack hurt Li Anping? Looking at the golden pagoda falling from the sky, Li Anping snorted coldly, and the 10,000-meter giant palm was like the claws of an ancient giant monster, and it had already grabbed the golden pagoda. You don't know how to live or die. As Li Anping snorted, the magic weapon that had cost the life of the heavenly king the pagoda was crushed by Li Anping. It looked as simple and easy as crushing a Coke can. Terrifying light burst out from countless fragments. However, after the magic weapon was broken, it was enough to rival the power of thousands of nuclear bombs, but it was all tightly held in Li Anping's palm, and it could not leak out at all. During the whole process, the giant palm almost did not stop. While crushing the golden pagoda, it continued to fly towards the direction where Shangtian was. And the heavenly king of the pagoda in the distance, because the pagoda was crushed by a pinch, his face turned pale, and he spat out a mouthful of old blood from his mouth, and he had completely fainted. To be continued. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xionglang Guo. Chapter 497. Seeing that the pagoda-bearing heavenly king had fainted, a trace of commotion flashed through the heavenly soldiers and generals again. They all watched Li Anping's big hand break through the air. Only a young man holding a fire spear, stepping on a wind fire wheel, and with 6 arms sneered and chased in front of Li Anping. Bold demon, if you want to invade the heaven, you must get past me first. Get out of here, little devil. Li Anping didn't let him finish his words. He shook his arm directly, and without doing anything, a stream of energy hit the boy's body. The boy only felt the infinite force pressing on him, and his body had already rolled and flew out. This force was so great that he was completely unable to resist it. Not to mention stopping, even if he wanted to slow down, it was impossible. This was a real beating. When other heavenly soldiers and generals found him decades later, they knew that he had flown for 49 days and nights, and flew directly to the end of the Milky Way, and almost couldn't return to the heaven. Seeing the young man being blown away by a palm, 4 more golden-armored heavenly generals rushed over holding a sword, a pipa, a red dragon and a treasure umbrella. These 4 were Dhritarashtra, Verpka, Varokana, and Vice Ravana. These 4 heavenly kings have been famous for a long time and have deep majesty. Seeing them rushing towards the 10,000-meter giant palm at the same time, the surrounding heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals cheered and encouraged, but no one dared to rush up. This time, Li Anping was even more impatient. Looking at these 4 ignorant golden-armored generals, he snorted coldly, "Little gods from another world, do you take the patience of the strong for granted?" As he said, Li Anping turned around and slapped him. In front of this palm, the 4 heavenly kings felt as if the whole heaven had collapsed. For Li Anping, it was just a little more effort, but for them, this was already the strongest power they had ever seen in their lives. Before the power arrived, despair had already arisen. The 4 heavenly kings exploded into a ball of blood mist one after another. Only King Zhongzhang was left, his eyes closed, quietly waiting to die. But he waited for a long time and found that he was still intact. He couldn't help but open his eyes, and saw a huge picture emitting the 4 auras of Feng Shui, earth, and fire floating in front of him. It was this unprecedented supreme magic weapon that blocked Li Anping's palm for him. Qing Dao Tianzun. Thinking of this, King Zhongzhang felt a sudden shock in his heart, and the word retreat came to his mind, and he flew back in a panic. Li Anping looked at the picture in front of him, and frowned while grabbing the Shangtian puppet. Otherworldly god. You are very strong, but you are still not my opponent. I came here just to find someone, and I don't want to kill people. It's a pleasure to have friends coming from afar at the same time as the sentence sounded. A figure came from afar. When he took the first step, in Li Anping's perception, he was still hundreds of thousands of miles away. After taking a step, it was only a few miles away. It was a middle-aged man wearing a Taoist robe, and there was no sense of power fluctuation on his body. In Li Anping's perception, the other party was not the same person as the one who just blocked his fist, but he was not weak in combat power. At the same time, the hearts of the heavenly soldiers and generals around him had flashed with shock one after another. From their hearts, Li Anping also knew the identities of these two people. Qingdao Deity Lord, Yuking Original Heaven Lord. Strange names, Li Anping shouted coldly. There is another one. Come out together. It seems that you are the most powerful gods in this world. Such a strong murderous nature, we haven't even started, you want to kill us first. While speaking, 4 amazing murderous auras soared into the sky. In Li Anping's perception, this was not a murderous aura that could be killed by killing people, but more like a kind of innate, naturally created breath. At the same time, among these 4 amazing murderous auras, a red-haired young man had appeared in the south, and Li Anping also read his identity in the consciousness of the heavenly soldiers and generals around him. Shangqing Lingbao Tianzun. Just as the red-haired young man finished saying this, King Daodi Tianzun, who used the picture to block Li Anping's punch, also appeared on the other side. He was a white-haired old man. He stretched out his hand and the picture disappeared into his body. An old man, a middle-aged man, and a young man surrounded Li Anping in a triangle. This action has set off a huge wave of shock among the heavenly soldiers and generals around him and the many gods who came. They looked at Li Anping with surprise. The giant palm disappeared with a flash, and Li Anping appeared here in person. Sensing that the power of people was constantly shuttling through the void and time, gradually pressing towards him, Li Anping's eyes emitted bursts of cold light. You guys, want to die so badly? The white-haired Qing Daodi Tianzun said, don't blame me, fellow Taoist. The 4 of us are strong. We are just protecting the creatures around us from harm. We have no ill intentions. Li Anping narrowed his eyes and said nothing. The people in front of him were not at the level of demon gods, but they were all powerful creatures with the peak power of the 8th energy level. Compared with the 8th level warriors of the evil gods, they were countless times stronger. Although this person still couldn't escape from his own universe, he was obviously able to freely roam in different spaces and times in this universe. If you want to kill him, it's not that you can't kill him, but if you fight with them, it's easy for Shang Tian to escape. Thinking of the remaining jade butterfly of fortune in Shang Tian's body, Li Anping frowned and said, Shang Tian, leave him to me, I'll leave now. Humph, who do you think you are? You come and go as you please, the red-haired young man spoke. As he spoke, 4 sharp, destructive, and murderous auras rushed towards Li Anping, making Li Anping's eyes even colder. Just as the tense atmosphere between the 4 people became more and more solemn, countless heavenly soldiers and generals in the layers of folded space in the sky around them were sweating coldly. The middle-aged man known as Yuking Yuanshi Tianzun spoke. Since he appeared just now, his fingers have been shaking, as if he was calculating something. Until then, a glimmer of light flashed in his eyes, and he looked at Li Anping and said, May I ask, Taoist friend, are you the 10th new demon god of the White Land, His Excellency the Kingdom of Delusion? The 10th demon god. The Kingdom of Delusion? A hint of doubt flashed across Li Anping's eyes, and he looked at the middle-aged man and said, when did I get this title, and where did you hear this information from? When the middle-aged man asked, both the red-haired young man and the white-haired old man had a hint of understanding on their faces, and when they looked at Li Anping's face, there were more complicated emotions. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xiong Go. Chapter 498. Don't you know yet, fellow Taoist? The news of the new 10th demon god has begun to spread widely in the White Earth. After the middle-aged Jade Purity deity Tianzun said this, Li Anping already knew a lot of things. First, although this person could not break through the boundaries of the original universe, Shang Tian came here through the boundary gate, which also allowed them to contact the White Earth, and it seemed that they had contacted various forces in the White Earth in a very short time. Li Anping did not know the news of the White Earth because the Earth forces were in the corner of the White Earth and had no connection with the many forces in the White Earth, and he himself had not traveled through the timeline of the White Earth for a long time. Even if he came to this heaven this time, he directly broke through time and space and came across the boundary with Shang Tian's connection. As for the news about the so-called 10th demon god, Li Anping immediately thought of a face with a smirk. The only people who knew that he had broken through the demon god level were the source of colorless and formless and the chaos tide, and perhaps there would be the idea of the four worlds. As for the one who spread this news to the multiverse through the White Land, Li Anping could not think of any other candidate except the chaos tide. Although Li Anping thought of many things in just a short moment, he still could not easily judge what the purpose of the chaos tide was. Thinking of this, he had planned to go to the Chaos Sea after catching Shang Tian. On the other side, Qing deity Tianzun and others did not speak, but they did not listen to Li Anping and hand over Shang Tian. Originally, according to their ideas, although Li Anping was powerful, he still had a great possibility of subduing the other party through Shang Tian and the Jade Butterfly of Creation, and once successful, there would be many benefits. With Li Anping's legacy, the knowledge he left behind, the earth, and most importantly, the Jade Butterfly of Creation after being entangled with Li Anping. Perhaps it will break through the boundaries of the original universe. At that time, not only will the humanity of the universe they live in be more prosperous, but their long-standing cultivation that has not been able to break through may also be loosened again. This is related to their enlightenment, the Jade Butterfly of Fortune that Li Anping wants to take away. It is also closely related to their world and their power. Although I don't know why Li Anping suddenly became the 10th demon god and his combat power exceeded theirs, but facing the enlightenment, people will never give in even if they die. Perhaps because he felt this, Li Anping's tone was even colder. It seems that we can't do without fighting. While saying this, Li Anping's entire body began to decompose and disappear. It turned into countless particles that were difficult to distinguish with the naked eye and dissipated in the air. Seeing this scene, the white-haired Qing deity Tianzun's face changed first, and his voice rang in the hearts of all the immortals around him. Retreat quickly. This is the true form of the demon god level, leave the heaven quickly. Those with the cultivation level of the golden immortal or above, no, feeling the fluctuations coming from the void. His face changed again. Everyone, leave the heaven. The power of the demon god level is far beyond the imagination of any creature in the multiverse. In non-combat moments, even on most battlefields, they either reduce the pressure of their power on the surrounding environment, or allow their high-dimensional bodies to communicate with low-dimensional life. The bodies they show to others are often not their true appearance. Mortals can only see a certain point of their whole body at most, just like a blind man touching an elephant. And when they begin to increase their strength, release the power in their bodies, or project more of their high-dimensional bodies into the dimensional world, the bodies they show are called true appearances by other creatures. Because of personality. Knowing the difference in power system, the true appearance and attack methods of the 12 demon gods are different. But anyone who has seen it will regard it as the nightmare of his life. It seems that he feels the speed of the withdrawal of the gods and heavenly soldiers around him. Qing deity Tianzun and the other two Tianzun each used their magic power, and with the roll of Taoist robes, they let everyone fly out of the heaven. But when their power touched the tower where Shang Tian was, they found that the tower seemed close at hand, but their magic power could not touch the tower. It was as if the tower had become an illusion, covered by a layer of silver light, and Shang Tian on the tower was full of despair, shouting loudly, as if calling for help, but they could not hear Shang Tian's voice. Is this called the true appearance? From your perspective, it is a very appropriate description. Li Anping's voice shook the entire heaven. In a short period of time, all the materials in the entire heaven were covered by a layer of silver light, whether it was pavilions, fairy beasts, clouds, or even air, all with a layer of light silver light. In the silver light that has exceeded the visual recognition of all creatures, thousands of materials like silver crystals have combined together to form a silver crystal country. All phenomena in the universe are composed of electromagnetic force, strong force, weak force, and gravitational force. Even in other universes, there may be no electromagnetic force or no strong force, weak force, or no gravity, but it is just a change of name or a method. The composition of these universes and the birth of various physical phenomena must come from some element, some force, or some field. And in this silver crystal, the electromagnetic force, strong interaction force, weak interaction force and gravity of this universe were all eliminated. A force unique to Li Anping began to replace the four great forces and integrate all phenomena in this world. Time and space began to run according to Li Anping's thoughts. It was like a watch with all its parts forcibly replaced. At the same time, other timelines in this universe were gradually shrouded in silver light, and all choices were deleted one by one, just like countless forked branches were forcibly tied together. Through Li Anping's forced integration of one parallel world after another, the forked branches began to grow in the same direction, and countless parallel worlds were destroyed, or merged into one world. It looked like the encirclement was gradually shrinking in order to catch prey. He was cutting off the retreat of Qing Daodi Tianzun. No, stop him. He wants to surround us. As the red-haired young man spoke, four earth-shaking murderous auras flew out and disappeared into the void in an instant. On the other side, Qing Daodi Tianzun shook his hand and threw the map out. This map has the power to redefine earth, water, wind, and fire. In Li Anping's eyes, these wind, water, earth, and fire are just the four great powers. Now the map is thrown out to offset Li Anping's behavior of forcibly operating this world with his own power. On the other side, Shangqing Yuanqi Tianzun shook out a Pangu banner. As the Pangu banner that can tear through time and space appeared, a trace of black cracks and huge holes appeared in the surrounding space. He and Yuking Lingbao Tianzun, one killed the past with the Zuxian sword formation, and the other communicated with the future with the Pangu banner. They were using their own power to interfere with the development of other parallel worlds, creating countless choices and possibilities, generating new timelines or parallel worlds, and preventing Li Anping from merging all timelines. Qing Daodi Tianzun used the map to make the four great powers operate in the universe again, resisting the current Li Anping's erosion of this universe. The reason for this division of labor is that the biggest difference between them and the demon level is that although they can travel through timelines and jump on different timelines, they have killed their past, present and future and merged them into one, so they cannot exist in all time and space at the same time. They can only work together to stop Li Anping's invasion at the same time. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Man at the Top of the Food Chain. Author, Xiong Lango. Chapter 499. Time and space become confused from this moment on. All history is slowly changing. The timeline of the entire universe seems to be wrapped in silver rays of light, or entangled in countless silver snakes. Four flying swords, a long flag, and a catalogue are constantly trying to dispel the silver erosion. But their efficiency is much weaker than that of the silver snakes. The probability of the entire universe is changing, because many forces at each point in the timeline are replaced by Li Anping's own power, causing the foundation of the entire world to change. Li Anping replaced the four powerful forces with his own power, causing the parameters and laws of the universe to gradually change in various places, changing the flow of the entire timeline. Except for the three Tianzun and Li Anping who can jump out of the timeline and detect this change, other living beings living in this world cannot know or perceive their history and their consciousness almost every moment. Changing all the time. In the sky, Sun Wukong let out a series of roars, and the muscles all over his body exploded, which was enough to push the power of the 5 mountains. However, he could not delay the falling Wuzi mountain even a little bit. He could only watch with an angry face as he was quickly moved towards the earth. Press away. Tathagata. The Buddha sitting high in the clouds showed a sneer, the magic power on his body surged again, and the speed of Wuzi mountain's fall increased again. Just when this historical event was about to happen according to the established trajectory, a ray of silver light flashed from Sun Wukong's eyes, and then he saw his body soar to more than 20 meters in an instant, and his whole body was covered with hair in an instant. Silver hair. A fist the size of a truck hit Wuzi mountain, making an earth-shattering noise. The entire Wuzi mountain exploded in the sky and turned into countless meteor showers falling to the ground. Ha 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 ha, the silver giant ape let out a series of wild laughter. Tathagata. No one in the world can save you today. Roar. After a roar, the giant ape came to the Buddha. At this moment, Feng Shui and earth fire, that is, electromagnetic force, strong interaction force, gravity and weak interaction force, all dissipated in the giant ape's punch. Wherever the silver power goes, everything is either replaced or replaced. Return to nothingness. A whole body of mana was eliminated in an instant. A look of astonishment flashed across Buddha's body, and his head had been turned into an exploding watermelon by a punch. The next moment, the giant ape was about to punch again. 4 sharp rays of light had strangled from the void. The entire sky was covered by red sword light. In the sky, the silver giant ape was caught in the red sword formation. He roared repeatedly, but still couldn't stop the ubiquitous red sword light from leaving blood marks on his body. However, every time the sword light struck the giant ape's body, it would be tinged with some silver light. Let the operation of the sword formation gradually stagnate. Even with the power of the Zuxian sword formation and the deep cultivation of the jade purple Lingbao Tianzun, it would be difficult to completely stop the erosion of Li Anping's power. The most important thing is that history has been changed at this moment. With the death of Buddha, countless timelines were cut off, and countless new parallel worlds were created. But this was just something Li Anping and Lingbao Tianzun did casually as they passed by. Both Li Anping and Lingbao Tianzun knew about it. If you want to change the direction and quantity of the timeline to the greatest extent, you have to jump to the source of the timeline. The further forward the timeline is, the less effort you can make, the greater the change. And historical events with major impact are Li Anping's main target. Lingtai Fankan Mountain and the 3 Stars Cave with the slanting moon. A monkey had knelt on the ground, looked at the silver figure in front of him and said, "Master, I want to learn the method of immortality." The figure glanced at him, raised his head and created an ancient book. He threw the ancient book to the monkey and said, "By cultivating this electromagnetic drive method, not only will you gain immortality, but you will also be able to travel around the world with ease. However, given your qualifications, it would take too much time to practice. I would like to give you a helping hand." The next moment, infinite electric light enveloped the monkey, and along with the shrill roar of the beast, history was changed again. Countless new parallel worlds were born, and countless old timelines were cut off. On Zhualong Ridge, Master Wen was suddenly suffocated when he was surrounded by the heaven-reaching divine fire pillar made by Yun Zongzi. He escaped with a ray of silver light and changed his fate of death. At the foot of Chantang Pass, Neza, the 3rd son of Li Jing's family, was able to go to heaven and see as soon as he was born. He knew astronomy and geography. It was said that a silver stranger taught him the Dharma in his mother's womb. On Kailan Cliff, Zhangzia, who was studying the art of war, suddenly felt something in his heart. When he looked up, he saw a flash of lightning filling his vision. Lots of knowledge that did not belong to this world suddenly entered his mind. He felt like I have lived in another world for a lifetime, and now I am awake. History is constantly being changed, but both Li Enping and Ling Bao Tianzun are still jumping towards the past, but it is no longer just rough fighting and killing. Li Enping's methods of changing the timeline are becoming more and more subtle and increasingly difficult to restrain. He began to look for the most critical nodes, trying to leverage history with the least amount of force to make the entire timeline go the way he wanted. Both Ling Bao Tianzun and Original Tianzun frowned after discovering this. Originally hiding behind the scenes, they govern and rule the entire universe through countless small changes in probability, obtain resources to improve their own cultivation, use the heaven and earth as chess, and all things as pieces. This is their best method. Without the past, there is no present, and there is no future. They can jump across all timelines, so they are very good at doing this. But now, the demon-level Li Enping can exist at countless time points on countless timelines at the same time, and can also reset the geomantic omen, modify the parameters and rules of the universe at will, and change strategies. He gradually began to use the smallest force to distribute in a wider space and time, and manipulate the entire timeline. Whether in terms of breadth or depth, this kind of battle on the timeline has gradually exceeded the control of the three Tianzun. The journey to the west, the battle of the gods, as Li Enping shuttled through the timeline, more and more historical events were changed. He changed the probability of various possibilities in time through various subtle parameter changes, and continuously reduced the number of timelines. Li Enping traced back to the time when Pangu created the world, Ling Bao Tianzun and Yuanqi Tianzun had completely fallen behind. Time and time again, whether it was the prehistoric times, the conferred gods, or the journey to the west, the historical trends they represented were always at a disadvantage in front of Li Enping's layout, causing the timeline to be changed again and again. Their defensive space was getting smaller and smaller, and the enemies were getting more and more. Now, the silver crystal substance has wrapped up the giant named Pangu in front of him. Li Enping will completely change the universe, and his body on the entire timeline will control the operation of the entire timeline from beginning to end. To be continued, please search for Ocean literature. The novels are better and updated faster. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xiong Lang Go. Chapter 500. Taking Moral Heavenly Lord, Shangqing Primordial Heavenly Lord and Yuking Ling Bao Heavenly Lord felt that the situation was becoming more and more difficult. Although they continued to use the magic weapons in their hands and the magic power in their bodies, their power was still minimal in the face of Li Enping, who revealed his true colors. However, although the form is difficult, at their current level, it is not easy for Li Enping to kill them completely. At this moment, the heavenly palace where the three of them were was suddenly enveloped in a layer of silver mist. In fact, with the changes in history, the Tiangong has also changed drastically at this moment. What was originally Li Enping's cross-border pursuit has become the famous Silver Mother in history. The sage Li Enping was in the Palace of Heaven, discussing the three great gods of Taoism. At this time, as the entire heavenly palace was wrapped in silver mist, the face of Daodi Tianzun changed and he shouted, "No, I've fallen into a trap." But when the three of them realized it, it was already too late. They spent too much effort to fight against Li Enping on the timeline. When they took back the magic weapon in front of them, the entire Tiangong had disappeared in a silver light. Many gods and heavenly generals in the world were shocked when they saw the Nantian Gate and the heavenly palace disappearing in the sky, but they soon returned to their daily work under Li Enping's comfort. In their memories, it was the three heavenly lord who discussed Taoism with Li Enping, and finally achieved enlightenment and ascended to other worlds. Abyss, on the plains of Avernus. Many demons who were still fighting each other gradually stopped. They tilted their heads and looked up into the sky one after another. They saw a tower suspended above the white auspicious clouds, an unknown tower billions of miles long. The heavenly palace is curled up in layers of space and shining brightly. In the hearts of demons and devils, this thing is too similar to things in heaven, but according to the truth, gods cannot enter the abyss. And the smell of this thing was a little different from anything the demons knew. At this moment, endless thunder and sword energy poured down from the heavenly palace, turning all kinds of demons and devils on the ground into puddles of flesh. A voice exuding endless murderous intent and chill came faintly from the heavenly palace. Lian Ping. But the next moment, the infinite demons were enraged, and they began to attack the palace in the sky, and the palace seemed to have turned into a huge millstone, turning countless creatures into powder. Taking Daodi Tianzun, Shangqing Yuanqi Tianzun and Yuking Lingbao Tianzun, who were forcibly transferred to this universe by Li Anping, each waved the Tai Chi diagram, Pangu flag, and Zuxian sword, venting all their anger on the devils and demons in front of them. The bloody battle, which was already a mess, became even more confusing. They who have not reached the demon god level cannot jump between different universes at will. They are now sent to this universe. If they want to go back, they don't know how many years it will take. Not only that, the changes in the universe have caused their power to decline, and they need to readapt to the various parameters and rules of this universe. It takes more time. Only then did Yuking Lingbao Tianzun understand what Li Anping meant. He never thought about completely killing the three of them from beginning to end. As he said at the beginning, it would take too much time to kill the three of them. The bright red-haired Lingbao Tianzun became angrier as he thought about it. Thinking of being sent to such an unknown universe, thinking that not only the jade butterfly, but also the universe that he had managed for countless years was taken away by Li Anping in the blink of an eye. Even the Taoist mind that has been polished for countless years is still a little rough. His eyes scanned the strange creatures on the ground. He snorted coldly and saw 4 shocking rainbows rising into the sky, like 4 broomsticks. Start frantically strangling the demons on the ground. After sending away Dao Deshanzun and the others, Li Anping's true identity gradually disappeared from the three-dimensional sight of ordinary people. He returned to his human form again and looked at Shang Tian aside. The battle just now, due to Li Anping, did not affect the 3 Shang Tian people in the tower at all. At this time, when they saw Li Anping turning around, the 3 people's faces turned pale at the same time, as if they had seen a ghost. The fight between the 4 people just now was completely beyond their understanding. They were confused from beginning to end, but the only thing they understood was that Li Anping's combat power at this moment was far beyond their imagination. I'm afraid with just one look, one breath can crush them to death. Kudia was the first to kneel down. This descendant of the ancient people on earth was the first to surrender and said, "Your Majesty, I am willing to surrender to mankind and contribute to your Majesty's great cause." Shang Tian and Ye Beast on the other side looked at Kudia hatefully, really wanting to kill each other immediately. But the 2 of them looked at Li Anping again, with only deep despair in their eyes. However, Shang Tian still said firmly, "If you want to kill me, just do it. If you want me to surrender or give in, don't even think about it." Although his voice was trembling, he could say this in front of Li Anping. In other words, it is quite remarkable. But when Li Anping heard these words, he just smiled. "Do you think the so-called surrender or not has anything to do with you?" When Li Anping finished these words, Night Beast on the side had already knelt down first. He looked at Li Anping with admiration on his face and looked at Li Anping feverishly. "Uncle Ye," Shang Tian turned around, glared at Li Anping fiercely and said, "Did you change his consciousness?" "I just helped him make a better choice." As he said that, Li Anping stretched out his palm, and the jade butterfly of fortune came out directly from Shang Tian's forehead and fell into his palm. During the whole process, Shang Tian let out a huge scream. His eyes were red and his face was pale as he looked at Li Anping, but he didn't say anything else, because he knew that it was useless to say anything now. Swallowing the jade butterfly of fortune into his stomach, Li Anping said slowly, "You are still quite good at making trouble, but I don't want to spend more energy on you or you. So let you solve it yourself. He pointed out with one finger, and the silver light had already wrapped up Shang Tian. When the silver light dissipated, Shang Tian's eyes full of hatred had turned into indifference, as if the ice age had descended in his eyes. Looking at Li Anping in front of him, he half knelt down and said lightly, "My master, do you need me to do anything?" The brothers and sisters who have stirred up trouble in the parallel time and space, including all their friends, relatives, and people related to them, hunt them down, tear them apart, crush them into soil, and grind them into ashes. Disappear in the entire multiverse. Yes, my master. With that, Shang Tian took the night beast and flew out to the gate of the White Land to start his mission, which would be an endless and perhaps never-ending hunting journey. Either be killed or kill others. Kudia, who was standing aside, looked at Shang Tian's back with fear on his face, as if he was very afraid that Li Anping would brainwash him. At this moment, Li Anping's voice rang in his ears, "Don't just look, chase them and follow them. Your mission is to monitor them until the mission is completed." Yes, Kudia's body was shaken, and he didn't say anything else. He just followed with a heavy face and embarked on this endless road. To be continued.